people in the chamber tonight. They're not taking part. They're met from the Youth Council to come to observe. So let's make it a nice meeting that they can report back on. But up to you, David, that is, if you behave yourself. Okay, I'll read out the preliminaries first, then we'll get onto the agenda properly. The meeting this evening will be live stream meeting to the public. A recording of the public part of the meeting will be available on the council's website for the 24 hours. And that's only for Teams. On got this bit. Members of the public are entitled to take photographs, film, audio record and report on all public meetings in accordance with the Openness of Local Government Bodies Regulation 2014. People may not, however, act in any way considered to be disruptive and may be asked to leave. Emergency evacuation procedures, for those who are unfamiliar. Council chambers, turn left, follow the green emergency exit signs to the main town hall entrance and proceed to the assembly point at George's Square. Going to the agenda proper now. Apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair. Apologies received from Councillor Raja, Chair.
Okay. Minutes of the 19th of March. You okay with those?
Before you, Chair.
Section 106, Local Government Finance Act. Okay. Any disclosures of interest tonight? Either call them out now or when any item comes up.
None at this point.
Urgent business, I'm not aware of any.
No urgent business, Chair.
So we'll go on to the no references. So we go on to the service reviews. First item on the agenda tonight is a Holiday Inn on Luton Airport, page 9. Over to you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Good. So I'll just skim through these first couple of pages. We're looking at the Holiday Inn on Airport Way, which is very close to the airport, as you can see from this image. It's an existing hotel building. Looking at the outside facades on this image, and the purpose of the application is to gain permission for an extension to the rear to create an extra 89 additional rooms and an additional 2,700 odd square meters of area. They're also proposing to reclad the existing building to give it a newer appearance and sort of rebranding exercise. I should have moved on to the site plan there, so we can see the red line boundary of the site. This is a visual looking at the new massing to the rear of the building and the reclad, refinished appearance of the building from the front of the building. I'll quickly skim through these. Again, looking at that massing just to convey the sort of scale of it. And again, all these are in the report, so hopefully we've seen these already. So that's the scale of it, which we think is an improvement, and broadly against policy, we've examined it and found it to be broadly in line with policy, as detailed in the report. That's it on the policy map. You can see it's within an island outside of all the policy designations and allocations, except for the category A employment area to the rear, but it's just touching into that. So just quickly touching on the scale of the development there again. So existing 220 rooms, an additional 89, additional provision of EV charging to existing car parking spaces, which is a fairly constrained site. It's not really possible to improve on the amount of parking that's provided already, but I think Christopher, our highways engineer, will be able to touch on that later. Transport, as noted, there are some existing provisions and new bicycle provisions are being provided for charging. We've talked about the distance to town in the report and the distance from the hotel to the airport itself, which is quite close, which is just a 12-minute walk, just for context. We've had a few consultations on this with a few responses one objection from flood risk prevention, which we've dealt with, and we're dealing with under a condition. So this is just to illustrate the point about which conditions we're applying to this application and some ongoing discussions in relation to that. Thames Water are also looking for information on the foundations, which we'll come to at condition, I would have thought. This is just in the context of seeing it from the aerial view of the massing, just to give it give you an idea about how this is intended to look. Again, from the far side, looking towards the airport there. We've looked at the elevations and have been discussing those with the applicants and the agents, where they've shown a metallic kind of appearance to the facade, which we're discussing in more detail to try and get that appearance exactly right in terms of high quality design, which is what we're aiming for here. As the project progresses, we've been provided with some samples by the applicants, which we've left on the table there if anybody was interested in taking a look at the direction we're looking at taking this. But we're essentially saying we will reserve the materials by condition for approval, and we're likely to ask for a mock-up sample to be reviewed on site. So just quickly looking at the elevations there, we believe this is quite a big improvement on the existing building, which isn't particularly high quality, and the extension and the use of a singular material across the whole of the building gives it a kind of uniformity, which is agreed, I think, or supported. Just flipping through those again. So just quickly touching on the materials there. We are looking at those materials, and here are some examples of the materials again, in case that's easier to see that on the screen. So the conditions that we are looking at imposing on any approval would be related to land contamination and remediation strategies. We've slightly adjusted the wording on those conditions since it was issued as a report, but they are very minor alterations to the specific text of the conditions there. I can answer any questions on that later if needed. So that's the end of the presentation of that item.
Thank you very much. We've got two people, Kat O'Dowd and Louisa McCarthy. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. This application proposes the extension.
No, you've got up to 5 minutes to speak, or is it the two of you are speaking on this item?
So I'll be presenting a short speech and able to answer any questions, assisted by my colleague Louisa.
Can you repeat that, please? I couldn't quite hear it.
I will be presenting a short speech and able to answer any questions, assisted by my colleague Louisa.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Yeah, it's normally up to 5 minutes on an item, but yeah, ready when you are.
Thank you, Chair. This application proposes the extension of the existing Holiday Inn Hotel at Airport Way, Luton. The hotel currently comprises 124 bedrooms set over 3 stories. This application seeks to enhance and expand the existing hotel offer through a 4-story rear extension to accommodate a further 89 guest rooms. This will increase the overall hotel provision to 213 rooms. The proposed development responds directly to the continued success of the hotel and the growing demand for overnight accommodation in this part of Luton, driven primarily by London Luton Airport's expansion and the increasing passenger numbers. The development represents a sustainable and efficient reuse of brownfield land in an established hotel location, just a 12-minute walk from the terminal and adjacent to key transport links. Importantly, this scheme contributes towards meeting the significant shortfall of hotel rooms in Luton. As members will be aware, the 2021 Luton Hotel Study identifies a requirement for over 1,800 additional rooms by 2030, a figure that is only expected to grow further in light of the government's recent approval of the development consent order for Luton Airport's future expansion to accommodate up to 32 million passengers per year. This application provides a timely and appropriate response to that need. The hotel has maintained strong occupancy rates and already plays a key role in serving airport passengers, airline crew, and business travellers. The proposed extension will strengthen that role, helping to retain airport-related spending within Luton and enhancing the town's offer as a gateway destination. In design terms, proposals will bring forward a contemporary upgrade to the existing building, including high-quality recladding and modernisation, and will improve the overall safety of the building in line with current regulations. This will also support the potential to explore the future rebranding of the hotel to align it with a more upscale offering. The materials and design approach have been discussed with officers with samples provided, and this will be subject to condition. The extension block will be situated above the existing circulation route and parking area serving the operational hotel, allowing the extension to integrate seamlessly into the existing site without requiring reconfiguration. In terms of sustainability, the development continues to the required BREEAM rating, provides EV charging infrastructure, and delivers a biodiversity net gain through a comprehensive landscape and habitat enhancement strategy. Importantly, the scheme retains the existing 104 car parking spaces, which remain policy compliant, even with the provision of the additional rooms. No changes are required to site access, servicing, or refuse arrangements. This is a balanced and well-supported application that will deliver a clear economic uplift plus social and environmental gains. The application has additionally received no standing objections during the consultation process. From a policy perspective, the scheme fully aligns with the Luton Local Plan and the NPPF. For these reasons, I respectfully urge members to follow the officer's recommendation and grant planning permission for this important investment into Luton's hospitality infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions by members? Lee Bridgen.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for your presentation and discussion. So, first question is, how many new jobs would these additional rooms create, please?
Hey, do you want us to answer that one? So sorry, I'm Anil Khan. I'm the owner of the hotel, and we're looking at between 10 and 20 full-time jobs.
Can you speak up a bit, please? I can't quite hear you.
Sorry, 10 to 20 new jobs, full-time jobs.
20. Did you say 20?
Yeah, 20.
Thanks, Jess. So can I ask another one?
Carry on.
Thank you. Also, and apologies if this is including in the report, but how many of the additional rooms delivered will be fully accessible for people with mobility, disabilities, wheelchair users and the like?
So out of the 213 total rooms within the hotel, there will be 11 accessible guest rooms. So the proposed extension will deliver 5 of these accessible rooms.
Was that 5 additional rooms? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, carry on, please.
Thank you. And last question for me. So, where are we? So, can't find where I was now. Oh, yes. So, there's a condition in the officer's report that the BREEAM rating should be of minimum good standard. This is in line with LLP 37 of the local plan. This local plan was implemented before we declared a climate emergency, and many other authorities have a higher standard of very good or excellent. I was just wondering whether you would consider committing to a higher standard of very good or excellent.
As stated, the hotel is currently operating at a BREEAM good level, and the proposed extension would be policy compliant.
It's saying it would be compliant. Is that right?
I think-
Or do you want to repeat what you said again?
I think just to add to that, obviously the condition has to relate to policy. We can't upgrade that, so to speak, but it's obviously in everyone's interest to boost that as far as we can, and that will be the case for the applicant as well. So when we're progressing that, we'll obviously push it as far as we can, but we can't change the condition to upgrade that, so to speak.
Okay, thanks, Chair. No more questions.
Okay. Any further questions by members? Yeah. Clive.
Thank you, Chair. Do you run a shuttle service between the hotel and the airport?
Anil, if you'd like to answer this one.
I think Simon's getting ready to answer that, the general manager.
Yeah, hi there. At the moment,
Can you speak up a bit, please? Because we have a difficulty hearing. I don't know whether it's the your end or this end.
Can you hear me now? Hello, can you hear me?
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah, so there is currently a public bus route which runs directly outside of the hotel, which goes into the terminal.
So using a bus,
Yeah, and
a
it's
shuttle bus.
and it's also just a short 10-minute walk as well from the hotel into the terminal.
10-minute walk uphill.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Shuttle bus, so yeah.
No. I think that if they were running a shuttle, the next question was going to be, is it electric? But that's not applicable at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Jakob.
Yeah, as somebody who regularly uses the airport, and I use public transport, there's bus stops right by the hotel, so there is that.
That's the A service.
The A bus, Z bus, the ones that go to the terminal, they're stopped there. But I don't think it's reasonable to ask hotels to provide shuttles, because the last thing we want is more traffic going up that hill. So we want to keep those routes free for public transport, Chair.
Yeah, okay. Any further questions? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Page number 10, point number 3, mention about the contribution of highways and the legal agreement monitoring fee. Is it linked to the section 106 contribution, or this is
I think that's more of a question for a planning officer.
Planning committee? Okay.
Yeah. Have you got a question for the applicants?
Okay. So the mention about if they mentioned on the point number 2, the provision of local services and labor, how they're going to ensure, or they will recruit the local supplier, or they will use their existing, the supplier to continue their work. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it was local labour and services that you recruit.
That's correct.
Answered yes. Any further questions? Okay, thank you very much. We go to the planning officer. Any questions? Or Lee first. David second, and
Thanks, Chair. So I understand that this building is going to require some Category A employment land. Obviously, the hotel is C1 classified use. So how does this planning application fulfil LLP 14's exceptional circumstances test, please?
I would have to check on that one. It's exceptional circumstances. If you can, if I can come back to you on that one.
Yeah, we would probably need that information before we vote, I think.
Right.
So it's certainly a material matter, as
Can
as far as I'm
anybody, can you
concerned.
assist, Clive?
Yeah, just going through the report. We'll come back to you on that point tonight. We're just going through the report.
I think the category A employment area is right at the back of the site, and the site boundary doesn't actually cross that policy boundary line. So we've treated it as being adjacent to it, but without actually triggering that. But we've considered it under the terms of that policy, but without necessarily requiring that trigger.
Okay, if we've got confirmation, or we can get confirmation that it definitely doesn't actually use any of that land, then that resolves my.
It's
my
in the
question.
report somewhere. Clive's just looking for it. Have we got another question?
That was it for me. Thanks, Chair.
We'll get back to you on that one. David?
Yeah, thanks very much. It's a very prominent site, and it's almost impossible to get to the airport without noticing it. So if we could just have a look at any one of the what's the word I'm looking for? Any one of the faces of the building. Just I want to get an idea of how much of the building is actually going to be covered with cladding. And then the question that follows from that, obviously, is, has a decision been made on which of the colours that we were shown is going to be used? And if so, could we have a look at that, please?
If I can just take us back through the presentation here and look at the elevations again. It's the entirety of the building. It's the existing, yeah? Sorry, I'll go back to that one then. The entirety of the building will be reclad. I think the intention is to try and reuse as much of the existing built structure as possible, and essentially replace the cladding like for like in terms of dimensional panel sizes, and therefore reduce waste. The material is not entirely fixed yet, but we're working towards a direction where it'll be a metallic bronze finish, dark metallic bronze finish, something that looks high quality. So we're working on
Are they samples you've got down there that I can see?
These are some of the samples, yeah. But if I go back to the image, please help yourself to having a look at those physical samples that we have. Again, it's not an entirely fixed material selection yet. We're developing this with the clients, with the applicants, beg your pardon, and we will be expecting to see large material sample mock-ups on site, or at least a substantially decent sized sample panel to review.
So it'll be one of those samples then.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No.
Some of these samples we were provided by
it'll look awful
agents,
anyway.
and some of them have been sourced in connection with materials that have been discussed.
Okay.
I hope that answers the question.
Francis?
I might have missed it, but is there a section 106 on this?
Yes.
Yes, we're working on heads of terms for section 106 with the contributions to highways. It's £20,000 contribution to improve the area of the footway around the hotel, and monitoring condition of £5,000.
That's not in the report, is it? Unless I've missed it.
It should be in the report.
Yeah, I think it is. Got it, Francis? Yeah. Councillor Ambley, you want to ask your question now to the planning officer? Are you okay? Any further questions? Any comments?
Do you want me to come back on?
Yes,
Councillor
point? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I was just looking through the report. So I think it's paragraph 24. And basically, yeah, I think the way we've treated it is it literally sort of just touches the boundary of the employment area. So we've not considered it to be contrary to policy. It does, as we've heard, provide some employment opportunity anyway with the extension. But yeah, we basically have treated it as not contrary to the employment policy.
Great, thank you. That resolves my question. Thank you.
Okay, any comments? Okay, the recommendation is approval. subject to the conditions and delegated authority for the cladding, etc., etc. So I'll move approval. Is that seconded?
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you. The vote now, Eunice?
Yeah. Starting with Councillor Ajisola,
4.
Councillor Ambia, Councillor Bridget,
4.
Councillor Farouk, Councillor Hanif,
4.
Councillor Frank,
4.
Councillor Alia Khan,
4.
Councillor Mead,
4.
Councillor Steer,
4.
Councillor Taylor.
4.
Carried.
So that's unanimous, carried. So planning permission has been granted, subject to the conditions under section 106. We'll move on to the next one. That's land adjacent junction 10, page 43.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. The agenda items 8 and 9 relate to plots F and G at junction 10 of the M1, application numbers 240048, 408 and 409 respectively. The applications are stated in the following terms. The proposals are for the installation of perimeter fence and laying of hard standing in connection with the use of the site for open storage use class B8 at plots F and G and associated works. With the Chairman's agreement, it is proposed to present these applications together, since the matters which relate to the applications are in alignment. Before I do that, I will set out the proposals for the two applications, and then I will go into the detail of the matters which are relevant to the proposals. Firstly, there are no updates on the application. If I could have slide 1, please. This slide sets out plots F and G in relation to the wider Newlands site, plots A to E. If I could then have slide 2. This shows the location plan of plot F in relation to the site as a whole. If I could have the next slide, please. This slide shows plot F in relation to the units which are proposed on plots A to E, which are identified Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, and Unit 4. Unit 1 is that which is currently under construction. If I could have the next slide, please. This is the site plan. Access to this site will be from Newlands Road through the access to Unit 1, and it will be shared with Unit 1. If I could have the next slide, please. This is the proposed means of enclosure for plot F and showing the gating arrangement. If I could have the next slide, please. These are views of the site from the surrounding area, which give it its context. If I could have the next slide, please. This shows plot F in relation to the allocation for policy LLP5. If I now go on to application 409, the next slide, please. The next one again. This shows the location of plot G, which you will see is the split from plot F by Church Road. If I could have the next slide, please. Similar slide to the previous one, which again shows plot G in relation to the wider site. If I could have the next slide, please. Access to plot G is from Church Road. There is an existing access, but it's going to be slightly amended to meet a comment made by Central Beds. If I could have the next slide, please. This means of enclosure at plot G is similar to plot F and indeed to the wider site. If I could have the next slide, please. Again, similarly, the views into plot G. If I could have the next slide, please. Again, similarly, this shows plot G in relation to policy LLP5 and I will explain the relationship with the wider allocation. If I could have the next slide, please. This slide shows the a CGI of the proposed development at Newlands. You'll see the Unit 1, which is that adjacent to the M1 in relation to plots F and G. And if I could have the next slide, please. This is the elevation from the western side, which would be adjacent to plot F, and a drive down Newlands Road indicates the extent of the impact of that elevation. If I could have the next slide, please. Again, just summarizing the context for plots F and G in relation to plots A to E, plot E being Unit 1, which was the elevation on the previous slide. The matters which relate to these applications are set out in paragraph 22 of both reports and are as follows. The principle of development, the park and ride, impact on the locality, ecological considerations, archaeology, highway implications, and implications for adjoining occupiers. These matters are fully covered in both reports in paragraphs 23 to 60. It is considered that the principal issues relate to the principle of development, the park and ride, highway implications, and the general impact of the development. If I deal first with the principle of development. The use of the site for storage purposes has been confirmed by a series of applications submitted for the overall Newlands Park site, which has been allocated for a mixed-use development since the mid-1990s. The overall site, including plots F and G, has been the subject of a number of applications as set out in detail under the site history, which is in paragraphs 6 to 12 in both reports. Topographically, both plots F and G have level changes across the site. Despite the recent engineering works on the site to create development platforms, the sites still slope in a manner that limits the potential for other forms of development. The levels on the site mean, in effect, that to increase the developable area, the amount of engineering works and material movement off-site is increased. In addition, there is also a high-pressure gas main that runs on the plot boundaries with Newlands Road. This has an easement of 3 meters that must be kept clear of any buildings and development. Power lines also cut across the southern part of the plot. The sag and sway analysis confirms that there is a limited amount of height that can be safely developed at this location. In consequence, there is little opportunity for built form to be provided on the site. Open storage is the only practical use of the site in the context of the principle of a storage use being established. Turning now to the park and ride. The safeguarding of a park and ride at Junction 10 is set out in policy LLP5 of the adopted local plan, where there is an ongoing requirement to safeguard 2 hectares of land. The inspector following the EIP in respect of the current local plan required in policy LLP40 that the matter of the park and ride should be considered as part of the local plan review to address the wider transport strategy requirements of the town. The position is, therefore, that the safeguarding for a park and ride remains a policy requirement. The safeguarding requirements of policy LLP5 have been secured in successive applications, with plots F and G being identified as providing the quantum of development to meet the safeguarding set out in the policy. Given this background, it is considered that the safeguarding of the park and ride, as set out in the report, should be properly considered as part of the local plan review. Also relevant in the matter of the park and ride is the Section 106 agreement in respect to the extant planning permission 20.01589. In summary, the Section 106 obligation states that it's within the council's remit to decide whether a park and ride facility is required to be situated on safeguarded land, and it is for the council to deliver, fund, and operate a park and ride facility. The applications as submitted propose development which seeks to provide open storage on plots F and G. In consequence, as there will be no built development and the site will remain open, this will ensure that the park and ride facility as required by policy LLP 5 will be safeguarded. The proposed development is therefore consistent with policy LLP 5 of the Luton Local Plan. Highway implications. The matter of highway implications is set out in both reports. In the case of 408 in paragraphs 51 to 58, in the case of 409, 49 to 60, and I don't propose to add and repeat these details. General impact of the development. The use of the site for open storage needs to be controlled as to the manner in which it is used to ensure that the site is used in an organised and orderly manner. The applicant has confirmed that it is intended that the use of the application sites will be associated with units 1 to 4, units AE of the Newland site. Conditions are proposed which will require details of an operational management plan which will set out how the site will be laid out and managed. There is also a condition which provides a limitation on the extent of the use and also the manner in which the storage arrangements are to be executed. It is considered that these conditions will safeguard the appearance of the site in the context of the surrounding area. The development should also be considered in the context of the adjoining development, particularly in relation to the development of Unit 1, which has a flank elevation 34 metres in height. Accordingly, it is considered that the proposed development can be satisfactorily accommodated without material harm to the character of the area. Conclusion. The scheme is considered to be acceptable in principle, supporting the development of the adjacent strategic allocation site, and with suitable mitigation measures by way of conditions, the impact of the development can be satisfactorily controlled to ensure that the proposed development would have no material adverse impact on the surrounding area. The development would therefore be in accordance with the policies that are set out in paragraph 62 of the report and 64 of 0049. Taking all the matters set out in the reports, it is recommended that planning permission is granted for applications 2400-408 and 2400-409. Procedurally, members will be required to vote on each application separately. Thank you.
Thanks, David. I've got Sean McGrath to speak. You're familiar with the procedure since you've been here a few times in the past, haven't you? It's up to 5 minutes to speak on behalf of the application.
Thank you, Chair, Councillors. These applications are for open storage. They are simple. They comprise access, hard standing and fencing. The topography constraints caused by the high pressure gas main running along Newlands Road and the clearance required for the power lines across the site mean that we cannot put a commercial building on either site. This is why open storage is the only viable commercial use. This is particularly true because open storage will make the units that are already consented more attractive to potential occupiers. The reality is that modern logistics facilities maximise the site and efficiency of their buildings relative to the size of the site. This means that there is little space for ad hoc storage and the storage of lorries, parking of lorries. For example, some operators have used more lorries at peak times. If they're at Easter and Christmas, other periods they will store them off site. So it does make it more attractive to the people who use the big units. And some potential occupiers have specifically asked whether there is off-site storage provision. However, we do not know what the use will be or what the storage will be on the site. That is why we have agreed conditions with officers to ensure that The storage remains orderly and organised, and it will not look unsightly. The occupiers also have to provide an operational management plan to show how the sites will be controlled before they can be brought into use, and this will ensure that they don't damage the character of the area going forward. Mr. Hall has dealt thoroughly with the park and ride, so I will not add anything to that. And I will finish just by saying I really do hope that you will support these two applications tonight. They're the final two pieces of the Lunas Park development, so that they can come forward. We are sure that having the ability to provide off-site and overspill storage will make the wider scheme more attractive to potential occupiers looking for headquarter premises. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Any questions by members to the applicant's representative? Any questions? Okay, that was easy, wasn't it, Sean?
Thank you.
Questions by members to the planning officer? David?
When the outline application came before us, we were told, in fact, the report spelled out that the development was expected to produce between just under 1,000 and 1,800 jobs. I wonder if we could now be told what contribution the open storage will make to the provision of these 1,800 jobs.
Well, the reality is that they are unlikely to generate significant employment. But as part of the wider site with the other with the buildings on it, they will assist in making these units more lettable, and as a consequence would generate employment. But the reality is, in terms of employment generation on their own, it's unlikely they will generate employment. They will be used for passive open storage.
Thank you. I have to make a comment at the appropriate time, please.
Further questions to the representative? And comments? David, you're the...
I'm sorry, I thought one of my colleagues was going to ask a question about the park and ride. So I'd like to drop that one in. I beg your pardon?
Does you want to ask it?
Yes, please.
Yeah, carry on then.
I just wondered if, in order to ensure the park and ride could come forward at some future time, whether it might be more appropriate to grant a time-limited consent.
Well, that's a consideration, but I would suggest that as far as this site is concerned, the requirement is to safeguard the park and ride. And we have consistently taken the view that the park and ride would be safeguarded on the basis that the land would be available. And I think the point with this application is that the land remains available. There's no built form on it. Effectively, if the council decide to purchase the site at a commercial rate and they decide to implement a park and ride, then the hard surfacing and the hard standing would make the site easily available to accommodate such a development. I think a temporary permission in this case would be unreasonable on the basis that we've never, as far as the safeguarding of the park and ride is concerned, indicated that before. And as long as the safeguarding is there, that would meet the policy requirement, because that's all the policy requires.
Thank you.
Any comments on either application, David?
I'm seriously concerned about the employment levels potential of this development. Our National Party has an organisation which provides free of charge advice on all sorts of technical matters, and planning is one of them. There are legal advice available as well. One of such people has given me some information, and this is coming from a person who has experience in this area, that the vast warehouse that is currently advertised to let, that you can see every time you go anywhere near, depending on the nature of business of the future occupier, that building could well be managed completely by up to about 20 people, most of whom would be sitting in front of computer screens programming the robots that actually run the business. I'm seriously concerned that we're going to end up with a whole load of more warehousing, which does not provide substantial numbers of employment opportunities. Warehousing never has, and actually is even less productive in producing jobs now than it ever has been, because of the levels of automation that are coming into the warehousing business. And unless I hear something to the contrary to convince me otherwise, it will, in the course of this discussion, it will be my intention to vote against this application.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, insofar as the wider site is concerned, members have granted permission for the development that is on that site. So it could be argued that the stable door has effectively been shut with the horse bolted. These two applications will not materially affect levels of employment, which will be generated from the wider site, which has already got permission. The point that Councillor Franks makes, I understand, but the situation would have been addressed at the time that the substantive application for units 1 to 4 was considered. These two sites are in effect ancillary to that main use and would not materially affect the employment situation which is generated by the wider site.
Yeah, thank you for that. Francis.
Could we just have some guidance from the planning solicitor? Is employment a planning matter that we can consider?
Yeah, employment is a planning matter, but I think it's been articulated very well by the planning officer in terms of this site is for ancillary storage. You've also heard about how this site has to be safeguarded, and the fact that this site, in any event, my understanding is it would be very hard to develop with anything else anyway. So it's not. There may be some employment that comes out of this in its own right, i.e. people manning the storage areas and so on, and indeed the people building the fences, for example, in the first instances. But the main employment will be from the actual development for which planning permission has already been granted, which may be 20 people, as the planning officer said.
Sorry, it was more a kind of general question. I'm new here. I wasn't really talking particularly about this application, but in what terms can employment then be judged against a planning application?
But we've had the same problems, the same questions with Prologis, that site as well, which is storage and industrial. So I think the same reasoning will be behind this one, because these types of employment have never produced that many jobs anyway. Storage, but I mean, this is just one part of the development on that site.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I think job creation, employment generation, regeneration, economic development, they're all material considerations that you factor in when you're making a decision on a planning application. Obviously, through this application, we've heard, they complement the users that already got permission. And within that, the Unit 1 that's being built now, there is large warehouse space, but there is a lot of office space as well. And you've heard from the applicant team that they were looking to try and attract someone that would use it as a headquarter building, given its prominent location. So, we understand the concern, but we think, when the decision was made on that earlier application, that it would create, significant employment generation.
Any further comments? Well, we'll deal with is it F first? We'll deal with F. Sorry. Oh, Ambler, yeah, you got a comment.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to get clarification about mention about open storage. So what kind of business they will operate if they go ahead the permission? Like, is it for the garden center or open? It is any specifically mention what type of business they will operate? Thank you.
Yeah, I think the question is what is open storage?
Well, open storage is just that, in terms of things like parking and storage of vehicles, containers, items like that. What we've tried to do with the conditions is to deal with them in two parts. One is the operational management plan, which will show how the site will be operated, how the items will be stored, and the second condition deals with the height of, for example, if it's containers, because what you don't want is, if you physically, I don't think it's possible, but you have an 8, 9 stacked high, so it's limited to maximum 2. But in terms of the use related to the storage, you mentioned garden centres, well, as set out in the report, this will be ancillary storage to units 1 to 4, which are a mix of office and other employment uses. So that's how it will operate in an ordered manner, with the site well laid out and well maintained, but related to the main uses on the site, the wider Newland site. As Mr. McGrath said, these are the last two parts of site, which have the other 4 parts have all got planning permission for business uses, storage uses. So this really is the ancillary uses. And I think what happened was that there was a thought in the original plans, it was indicated that there might be buildings on the site, notwithstanding the safeguarding point, but because of the limitations which I mentioned in the presentation, which are set out in the report, it's impossible to have anything other than open storage, which you've heard is there is a need for these substantive and marquee units.
Okay, any other comments? If there are no further comments, then we'll deal with plot F first, and the recommendation is to grant permission, subject to. So I'll move approval. Is that seconded? Okay.
Okay, Chair, for or against? Councillor Ajisola.
For.
Councillor Ambia. Councillor Bridget.
Against.
Councillor Farouk. Councillor Franks.
Against.
Councillor Hanif.
For.
Councillor Alia Khan.
For.
Councillor Mead.
Against.
Councillor Steer.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
4.
That's correct, Chair.
That's 7 for, 3 against. The planning permission is granted for plot F. And we go to plot G. The recommendation is approval, and I'll move approval. Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Okay, over to you again, Eunice. You're working hard tonight.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Gisola.
4.
Councillor Ambia. Councillor Bridget.
Against.
Councillor Farouk. Councillor Franks.
Against.
Councillor Hanif.
4.
Councillor Ali Khan.
4. Definitely not Councillor Aslam Khan.
I beg your pardon. Councillor Mead.
Against.
Councillor Steer.
4.
Councillor Taylor.
4. So same 7-3. So permit that's a pass. So granted, subject to the conditions. And that being the extent of the business tonight, thank you very much for your attendance. And see you at the next one. Thank you.